7:31 on May 9th, 2024. This is the annual meeting of the Village of Martins Addition will come to order. Just a quick word to begin with. The annual meeting is called for in the village charter. It must occur before May 15th, and it is when the budget for the coming year is adopted. It was introduced a few months ago. It's been discussed, it's been available for public review, and today is called for in the village charter as the day we adopt it. It used to also be the day of the election, but that has been changed in recent years. So before moving on, we will have the weather. And it is, I brought an umbrella tonight.
You might need it.
Okay.
You might need it. And I was presented this just moments ago by someone here in the council, and I will add to my gallery of cats.
As a neighbor and a friend, not a councilman.
It's not a bribe.
And a cat lover.
That's right. Mother's Day is coming up and that's what everybody's attention is turned toward, weather-wise as well as otherwise. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty nice day. I think if we get any showers, they'll be early in the day and will be of no consequence. It's going to turn a lot cooler than it's been, and it's going to stay that way. I don't see any more 90s. And
Okay.
down the road, looking down, I can't see them.
Good.
Mostly 70s. And
Oh, that's good.
that's the weather report for right now, and I'll be back with the committee report in a little while.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Keith. Do we have residents?
There are a few residents.
Any residents with comments, questions, advice? Any hands up?
Nope. Is there comments?
Okay, I guess everyone's run out of comments and advice. Okay, with that, we will move to approve. I so move to approve the council meeting minutes from April 18th. They're in this packet. They're very brief. We had a short meeting then. We've had the opportunity to go over them in the past several days. So do we have,
Second.
you have a second? Do we have everyone approve the meeting, the minutes of the last meeting?
If I wasn't
Okay.
there, can I still approve the minutes? So
That's a wrong question. Ron, if Katie wasn't
I
at the
just-
meeting, can she vote to approve the
Oh,
minutes?
yes. Oh,
She can. Typically, it's customary to abstain.
I'll
okay,
abstain, but
okay,
they look good.
okay. Approval.
Want to
I-
follow
You
them?
didn't
Okay.
find any typos.
No.
We have approval.
And could I just
Yeah,
observe,
go ahead, please.
when the meetings are so short, the minutes are short, and it really was so much faster
Yeah.
all around.
But both to do the meeting and to read the minutes.
Yes, all of it.
Now we come to the budget, and I will turn to our treasurer, Treasurer Jeff, to describe the budget for this year, and then we will have a motion to approve it.
Excellent. Well, let me start off and just say that I appreciate everyone's support, Arthur, village staff, our accountants, everyone who's provided the technical input to really put this budget together. Of course, as we know, we had a working session where we had several residents come in and really provided very important feedback. Since then, just putting in perspective, I've only received one written comment about the budget, just asking about a line item in terms of the shifting from the budget line item that we had for staff, why that had gone down, and had explained that that was actually more of a cost shifting and efficiency move where we had displaced the budget under staff and moved that into a category that would allow us more flexibility around consulting and technical support. The only other resident inputs that I had, and it was sort of informal, just putting it out there for full transparency, was at the election day event. There were a couple of residents who had come up and talked a little bit about the police force and safety, and also some of the work that's ongoing or will be part of the ongoing improvement plan on Brookville, and really echoed, I think, some of the concerns and interests of our residents, from are we being as efficient as possible with the budget for our police staff? Are there ways that we could look into things like cyclical, for example, around the holiday, the seasonality, to do things like that. But the other piece of this that I just want to share was also things we've already covered that we know. There's a real concern around the flooding and water management, which the task force has taken on. And I think we've discussed ad nauseum, but just putting for the record in this budget, we have, again, whether it's reserves or ARPA, those funds are there available to us once there are decisions made about whether we will directly fund a study or some of the state level grants might be coming in. And then finally, I guess the other piece of this, which I would just add, that's a bit new. And Michael, if you needed to, you could share, but we had tweaked the line item, budget line item for the staff salaries. At the time when this was introduced, there was only a budget for the cost of living adjustment and inflation, but there wasn't anything there, an envelope that would be like a standard X% for merit-based increase. So again, those are HR discussions that we typically have, but we wanted to just put that into the budget. With that, I don't think I need to take, unless folks have pointed questions, we could open it up, but we've discussed, I think, fairly ad nauseum the budget when it was introduced by line item, and this was for the March 21st. It's in the meeting packet and it's posted on the site, but it talked about all the things that we had changed by category. For example, like street cleaning, 5322, there was a change in $35,000. So we had gone through this at nauseum. And then I think maybe the only other couple things to put out is I think we recognize that the ARPA funds, we still have a significant portion that we need to consider, that we need to earmark, or what's your famous word that we use?
Burden.
Burden.
Oh.
We need to burden. So that is really going to be something that we need to stay on top of. And
The auditors use that phrase. So it's good for the auditors. That's good.
it's interesting because I never think of the idea of having an extra $500,000 as a burden, but that's a whole other. So I think in general, and just another line item or two, as Arthur, again, through his stewardship and the council, in general, we've, have been fiscally conservative, but we've always, when the residents more or less have asked for new programs and as part of the annual survey, we've had that flexibility. We've showed that through several of these programs that we've instituted, whether it's the composting or the snow shoveling and the Chevy Chase at Home. Some are pilots, but again, I think that we've been reasonably responsive. And, really, it's important to note, as we've stressed in the past, that if you look at the actual rate of our increase in expenses versus our actual real income that is coming in, they're getting pretty close. And in fact, we would expect that at some point, perhaps those expenses could, go a bit over the income, but we're in, again, magnificent shape in many ways because of our reserves, but also we have these sweeteners that should take us out several years from the ARPA to, again, because of the interest rates, we're getting income next year into the several hundreds of thousands above what we would normally get. So we're in very good shape, but always be mindful. So with that said, I think without trying to go on too much longer, let me turn it over to other council members if there's any specific questions and if there's anyone.
I actually have a specific question for Ron. Although I did bring this up twice in the last couple of months. I don't think we've addressed it ad nauseum, and I would love to have an answer to the aging in place question. When we first discussed this, and there were objections raised by residents and concerns raised by at least 2 council members, concerned that this could cause the council to pick and choose winners and losers, or it could be a slippery slope to funding nonprofits. There were reassurances that there would be criteria in place, that there would be eligibility criteria that the village couldn't administer because we certainly aren't equipped and wouldn't want to be looking into our residents' income, but that Chevy Chase at Home would apply those criteria. That didn't happen. And the program as it currently stands is first come, first serve. We have 10 slots now. We're contemplating, against my better judgment, expanding the possible expenditures. And I don't understand how that is not violative of Section 2401C of our code that very explicitly says there can't be any no municipal funds to public or private institutions, programs, etc. It just seems to me that we are not compliant with our own code, and that if we don't have criteria, this shouldn't be happening.
Ron, do you want to comment?
Sure, yeah, let me pull up the code.
It's Article 4, 2401C.
Got it.
And I think resolution or something as well. I forgot to look it up, but
It was definitely in the code.
well, this is the code, yeah, that I just cited, but
Yeah, the code was adopted after a policy on charitable contributions.
in 2012, I think.
2012, yeah.
I'm going to let Ron address the particulars of the code and the question that Susan brought up, but I'm happy to chime in on the other pieces of this that are more implementation perspective, and I invite Arthur or anyone else who'd like to. So first of all, I sincerely appreciate Susan's validity checking on this, because that's important. The other piece which I wanted to just bring up, which I believe we've also talked ad nauseum, was that the framing of this as a pilot. And
Right.
part of that, of the extension, is, I believe, based upon the numbers that came out, that by all accounts, we've looked at this as a success. And I think, as Arthur has shared very appropriately, is that it does take time to really assess whether or not a program, is going to be fully effectualized or really meet the goals that we subscribe to. So as far as I'm concerned as treasurer, but as a council member, I looked at this as a fairly straightforward litmus test. One, was it successful or not? And I think that, at least from my perspective, it is. We've had a number of residents have said that this has been successful. Two, we also know from Michael's analysis that there are a number of residents who didn't necessarily take advantage of the support, and we don't exactly know why that is the case. Was it about our marketing efforts? Was it the fact that, again, maybe they didn't want the support? So at the time when we had put this in the budget, again, Michael was very thoughtful in his analysis and said by this incremental increase, we could cover all, and it would just make sense. And so that was part of the calculus. And then recognizing the magnitude of this is 0.2% of our reserves, and also a very small percent. So I'm not trying to diminish your concerns. What I'm saying is that, so how I see this is that we're still in a pilot. I think we're going to refine the criteria. We're going to get additional input in terms of whether this makes sense for our residents. And I think that we can make some real conclusive final say on this by the end of next fiscal year, because by then, again, it takes a couple of years to really get the right branding, to get, again, the feedback appropriately from those who have been using the program. And I have the same questions. I'm not entirely saying that I believe that this is something that can be in perpetuity, because I just don't have enough facts, but I feel very comfortable based on what I shared from an implementation perspective, from a pilot, the demand from residents, of course, understanding that there are some who have voiced concerns, that this warrants this continuation for this second year. And I'll turn it over.
Ron? Okay, go ahead.
If I might just
Oh,
say,
go, please.
what are the criteria for whether it's successful? You say it was judged successful because people loved it. Of course, who doesn't love free money?
Yeah.
But I don't think it's legal. And without the criteria, I don't get it. Ron will answer that.
Ron, you've had a chance to look at the code?
Yes, I have, and looking at my notes and trying to recall our prior discussions, I believe I previously concluded that it would be permissible if it was structured like a application-based grant program.
Right.
And let me try to explain it like this. There's two laws really that we have to be concerned with. One is state law and one is Martin's Additions law. State law provides that public monies may be spent for any public purpose to affect the safety, health, and general welfare of the municipality and its occupants.
Right.
That's a broad clause. Then there's actually a very specific clause in Maryland law that provides money can be spent for the operation and maintenance of community and social services to preserve and promote health, recreation, welfare. So social services are definitely permissible. Martin's Additions in 2012 added this provision to the code to prevent donations in order really to stave off repeated requests from charitable organizations for donations. Well, not just charitable, but any organizations. So that was put in the code to eliminate the difficulty in responding to those requests, frankly. So, the question is, with that code amendment, has the village tied its hands somewhat? And I think the answer is yes. I think Susan raises valid concerns. I don't think that money can be given directly to a charitable organization as a donation or a contribution, but the village could operate a grant-based program. So I think where we landed before was we could have folks apply to the village and the village could give a grant equal to their membership fee to the Chevy Chase at Home. Does that sound familiar? Am I recalling that correctly?
That is
Yeah,
familiar, but
yeah.
I think you said there would have to be eligibility criteria. It wouldn't be merely
That,
applications.
we discussed
Right.
And we
eligibility.
said, and we said that we would not
We
be
would do it,
responsible
right,
for
but
that.
you're
but that
right.
They
We-
would.
We did discuss that. Let me get back to that because let me make sure we get back to that.
Okay.
But going to what Ron said, the fact that it is a charity does not preclude buying services from it. If Waste Management reorganizes a 501c3, we could still contract with them to pick up our garbage. The fact that it is a charitable organization does not preclude doing business with.
But if we did a contract with Waste Management as a 501c3, it wouldn't be a donation or contribution. It
Right,
would be a
that's right.
contract for services.
Exactly.
And
I'm
that is
glad you said those
exactly
words.
how it was framed
Right,
last
so
time.
that is
But
just,
that didn't happen because
No,
there weren't
this is contract
contractual
for services.
structures.
we are providing funds
Right.
for specific people, specific memberships, and we
Which
get an invoice.
specific ones?
For
Anyone
specific-
over 55? Is that our criteria?
Yeah,
Because-
well, let's get back to the criteria. The first question is this a charitable contribution? The answer is no. It's payment for services, invoice payment for services. You don't like that? Well, is that,
I do think there are
what,
problems legally, but
what,
we'll see what our council says.
well, Ron, okay, let's just hit that point right now. Is this payment for services? Or
Well,
is it a charitable contribution?
I recall our prior discussions, but I don't think I've ever looked at the actual setup of the program. So I can't give you a complete answer. but-
Okay.
I
but
mean,
based on what you just said, Arthur,
Yeah.
it would be permissible for the village to, as a grant, pay for folks Chevy Chase at Home fees. And the question is, what criteria is necessary?
Well, Ron, it's
In
not
order
a
for it to
if-
be a social service under.
Yeah, if we,
Maryland
if-
law.
okay,
Go ahead, Ron.
go ahead.
In order for it to be a social service under Maryland law, there ought to be some criteria. I think age may be enough. Age plus economic status would definitely be enough.
Right. And those were the criteria we discussed loosely, but with the intention of applying those criteria when we adopted this program. It was not only age, which of course makes it very easy to determine eligibility, but the economic status.
Yeah, and this is the problem that arose. When we first started talking to Chevy Chase at Home, they did have a program or for what they call fellowships, and they did apply criteria for that. Well, it turned out that went away. They stopped doing that. They had a small amount of money for that, so they stopped doing that kind of fellowship. And their criteria were very loose. Essentially, if somebody applied for it, they said, "Do you really need it?" They said, "Yeah, it's okay, you can have it." It was, and then so they stopped doing it. So the fact that we weren't doing it and they weren't doing it, the criteria kind of slithered away. But I would go back to the original. I think that if we are providing payment for services that are invoiced, like composting, then it qualifies. It's not a charitable contribution as defined under our code.
If I may, the way this has been working is I've been receiving the applications from the residents, and then I just forward those on to Chevy Chase at Home and say, we received an application. We would be happy to pay for this person. And then they invoice me for that individual membership. That is different than, for example, the town of Chevy Chase has a grant program with Chevy Chase at Home where they give them a set dollar figure for the entire year. They just give them $20,000, let's say, every single year. And then they just sign up all those members for free from the town of Chevy Chase. We're not doing that. We're doing it on a per member basis. So I kind of agree with Arthur on this. The way I've been doing it is using their criteria for whether they accept this person or not. And they do have criteria, including age, as far as our membership goes. But Arthur's right. They don't have any sort of criteria for financial means, which gets tricky pretty quick when you start trying to means test people, because what does a fixed income mean? What does a spouse that maybe the spouse controls the money, and there's all sorts of situations. So I don't know how means testing would even work, but we are doing it per membership base. So we have 7 people that have signed up, and I've paid for exactly 7 memberships.
And I would suggest that
I think that's right.
if Compost Crew were a 501c3, and they may be, I'm not sure whether Compost Crew is a profit-making organization or a charitable organization. Would that make any difference? We're paying for specific services. So that's my question to you. Would it make a difference?
So
Can I speak up? Can I speak up for a second?
Sure.
Identify yourself and speak.
This is Susan Post, and I'm actually on the board of Chevy Chase at Home.
Oh,
And a
good.
resident. So I can speak to the Chevy Chase at Home.
Sorry, my fault.
What?
Okay, go ahead.
I think that nobody, neither the Village of Martin's Additions or the Village of Chevy Chase at Home, wanted to get into the business of asking for people's tax records and things like that to determine need. So I think from the point of view of Chevy Chase at Home, it was not necessarily to be based on need. It was initially to be a 1-year supported membership, supported by the Village of Martin's Additions, with the idea that then members might start to pay their own way just to remain as members. I don't know if that's been made clear on the part of
But
the
age is a criterion, right? Is that correct?
Well, age is the criteria.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to be, I think, over 55.
Yeah,
something.
and that may be enough because if we think about what services does Chevy Chase at Home provide? And they aren't limited to financial-based services, right? There's, organizing rides to appointments
Oh,
and such, which,
it's not financial based services at all. It's right. It's rides to it's rides for people who can't drive, rides to doctor's appointment, to physical therapy, to the market, to the drugstore, all those kinds of things. I would say that is the primary volunteer occupation, but there are also people who do things like minor repairs in people's homes, changing overhead light bulbs, doing small repairs in the home, taking out heavy trash and recyclables,
Mhm.
all the kinds of things that are hard for particularly the older elderly. I'm not talking so much about 55-year-olds, but 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds.
Yeah,
And
I'm
they do
thinking
provide-
that's sufficient under the broadly
They
worded
actually
Maryland
do
law, which
provide great services. I don't think there's any question that it's a really wonderful organization.
Right.
I only question the legality.
Right.
That's all.
yeah,
Let me just say,
Great.
let me just respond also to the issue of the town of Chevy Chase and the $10,000. That's a grant. It doesn't pay for people's memberships. People from the town of Chevy Chase pay their own memberships.
Right. It's a pure,
That's
that is a
another-
pure grant.
that, yeah.
That's a pure grant, which is, I suppose, something else that
That would
That-
have
Well,
been- that
and
would
that
have
town
been-
doesn't
MA
have
could
a
do
code
and
provision
get
that
out of the
prohibits
business of determining memberships.
Right.
Okay.
Ron, one quick question. If it turned out that we found out that compost crew with whom we contract for picking up the compost were a 501c3, would that change anything in our relationship with them?
No, because our payment for services, like you said, would not be a donation or a
Or
contribution.
contribution.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really, again,
My
I think
case
the
read,
issue is how we have set it up. Is
Career.
that a legitimate public or governmental community or social service? And I think it is. Having
Right.
these services available for seniors doesn't have to be financial based. Now that I think about it more deeply with respect to what services are provided, certainly you can make the argument that anyone, especially a senior citizen, might be more comfortable having an organization drive them to an appointment rather than having to call a taxi, a stranger. Or, someone to come into the house and remove a bulk item to the curb.
Right,
Nice.
right.
And
Which is
I-
mostly,
okay, so please go ahead.
that's the bulk of what people use it for. It also, I mean, there are other parts to Chevy Chase at Home. There's a lot of promoting of social activity and communication so that people don't feel alone and stranded, particularly the ones who don't have children and grandchildren in the area. So there's support in a lot of ways to keep
Well-
people out of continuing care communities primarily.
So- Let me I'll just add one more case and I think we can go on unless you have more. What kind of convinced me was that we had a discussion with the Montgomery County coordinator of what they call the senior villages, which there's something like 18 or 20 of them. You probably know better, Susan Post,
Yeah.
about how many. And the county felt that these were performing vital services that the county was not performing, but established this office for someone to oversee it, to coordinate, to bring folks together, to share their experiences, because they thought that this was an important function for county residents that the county itself was not providing, and wanted to make sure that it was reinforced and continuing. And when I heard that, I said, well, if the county feels this could have been done by the county, but are choosing to allow these other organizations do it, sounded like something we could sign on to. Anyway, that's my, but
I'm done.
follow up.
No.
You're done?
I'm done. Yep,
Okay.
that's it.
The only thing I wanted to add to this, and again, first of all, Susan Post, thank you so much. I think you add the context
There's a
of the
context,
actual
yeah, written-
implementation,
written,
which is
yeah.
so important. And, triangulating that with Susan Fadig's concerns on, or just mentioning the idea of criteria, this is what I'd like to see, and again, I'd already mentioned this earlier. I think when we talked about this was sort of the consideration of the pilot still. I don't see this as a vote on some perpetuity that we are just going to continue. This is more of the idea that, and again, I think Michael can even mention this, that when he first proposed it, I had a little pushback because I had shared, well, I don't know. I mean, was it successful? How do we measure that? And then after having a chat with Arthur and then other residents and looking at it as the idea is, it does take a little more time. And that if you look at it from a historic perspective outside of VMA, it actually is a success given the numbers of folks who subscribe. But then Michael really pointed out the kicker, which is the number of residents who actually are part of Chevy Chase at Home, but didn't subscribe. And so with this basically extended pilot for 1 year, this will be our chance to have accountability of understanding now, I think it's 25 residents?
I think they said 24, that might have changed a couple, but yeah.
So about 24, 25 residents. This will be now an opportunity for us to really collect some data in a confidential, respectful way of understanding, not only the value of the program, but again, if there is any particular criteria. Because as Susan Post mentions, I mean, I think intuitively speaking, I don't know, but of the 25, how many would say, oh, I'll just pay for this myself, versus how many really would need that contribution because they feel they're on a fixed income, and quite frankly, the extra money would go to something else.
Right.
So I simply see this as an extension to collect the data, develop some criteria, and then there will be basically at the end of the fiscal year a vote on this on once a pilot ends, with a presentation of the criteria and presentation of some feedback from those who are part of the program. Does it make sense, or do we do our job? Which is, as Susan Post mentions, we created the brand awareness, residents like it, but quite frankly, they don't need our support, nor should we continue that support.
Okay, thank you. Katie, do you have any comments on the budget or anything else?
On this item, I really wish something had gone to law school except for the LSAT, but I think you raised some valid legal concerns. I always, I think we should stick to the criteria and measure the criteria. I'm not convinced the word is entirely out. I mean, we've done our job to advertise it, but I know myself that actually Michael printed out the application, and I took an application to the resident and dropped it off for home services that they said they badly needed and couldn't afford. I don't think that person ever applied. And that's how I've always viewed this, as a scholarship program.
Right.
I'm all about, the community and social services. And the thing is, we can't make people want a scholarship. You have to apply for the scholarship.
That is just exactly what the village or the county coordinator said.
Yeah,
She says, you can't force people to do it.
Exactly.
Who people you think most need it are unaware that they do.
right. And I'm wondering if we do extend it just some more, that we have a better measure. So I'm not entirely sure we have the best measure just
Okay.
yet.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think
Yeah.
also maybe just some indicators as to how often the people who get the scholarships actually use it. I
Mhm.
know of at least one person
Mm.
who I think has not used it at all.
Who signed up and just didn't use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I think that might be, I mean, it seems like a great concept, and why not? It's free money. In fact, I actually have heard that. But I think that should be part of the evaluations
Yeah.
next time if this is,
No, please go ahead.
sure.
Is Andrew on?
I don't
Line?
think so, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't see him.
May I ask, Susan
Can I-
Post? Oh, yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask
I
you a
just
question.
asked, were there actually 24 residents that you're supporting?
No,
Yeah.
24 from, we have heard 24 from Martin's Addition who belong.
Jen told me, the
Right.
executive director of Chevy Chase at Home told me that there are 24 members from Martin's Additions to Chevy Chase at Home. I
Okay,
think we,
so
I think
like
we,
me.
right, and I think we have paid
Right.
for 7 of those
Out of the 24.
out of the 24. And
Oh,
I
okay.
think 6 of those were brand new people that we brought in that weren't aware of the services or programs or didn't want to pay for it themselves. And because we had been advertising it, they reached out and filled out the application, which is just the Chevy Chase at Home application. I haven't done anything with it other than maybe add our logo and say to send it to me instead of directly to them. And then I think one person learned about the program and asked to switch over and us to pay for it. So we went ahead and did that. So that's where we're at right now. This budget proposal, which is what we're talking about today,
Right.
is bumping the dollar amount, to Jeff's point, is a very small dollar amount, from $6,000, which we haven't spent anywhere near that, to $10,000, which then theoretically would cover everybody. All 24 people could actually be covered under that dollar amount.
Or new people.
Oh, but
Or new people.
that's what, I mean, it seems like if you start saying, oh, we can do anyone who applies, you're sort of defeating the purpose of providing services to people who can't obtain them otherwise. It completely undermines the whole pretext of
So,
a
I
scholarship.
guess, well, people would still have to ask for it. So,
Right,
and,
so
so
they fill out
it's- We're
paperwork,
not just
but
paying for people automatically,
Right.
but other municipalities might well, even run their own senior services programming. And we're not doing that. All we're doing is
But you
saying, if you want to, we could, yes. I don't want to. And there's a perfectly good organization who's already doing this
Right, right.
for some of our seniors. So
That was the county's rationale as well.
May I ask just a quick question? Susan Post, sorry, did we lose you?
I'm
It's
I'm
okay.
here. I'm here.
Okay.
I just
I
thought you
just-
didn't need to watch me eat my dinner.
Oh,
Please.
it was enjoyable though. But anyway, I had a quick question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I was just curious from your perspective, really the implementer kind of liaison on this is, do you have any particular concerns about the idea that we would look, as we've discussed, to extend this pilot one more year to sort of get our understanding of any criteria, and then, have a good understanding of some data about who within the Village of Martin's Additions, what is not only the value, but do they actually need the support? And then by the end of the next fiscal year, we can make a decision about where we go. Because I hear you loud and clear. And I also felt the same things that Susan Fadick mentioned is, I think if most residents honestly don't need the support, and perhaps they may not want the support, and like you said, Susan Post, the idea was 1 year awareness, and then they would take it up unless perhaps they needed any support. I think we're going to be in a good position at the end of the next year to really understand all this. But I really just wanted to ask you, do you have any concerns or showstoppers about the idea of extending this pilot one more year?
No, I think it'd be great to extend it one more year, particularly if you want to do a real evaluation of, whether VMA is sort of getting its money worth.
Good idea.
Its
Okay,
residents, whether it's really helpful.
good point.
Yeah.
Okay, evaluation next year. Thank you, everybody.
thanks,
Thanks.
Susan.
Thank you.
You?
With that, unless I hear any other comments or objections, I would like to introduce ordinance number 2024-1, an ordinance to adopt a budget for fiscal year that begins July 1st, 2024 and runs to the next June 30th of 2025. So I introduced the budget. Do I have a motion to second it? Or do I hear a second?
I would be delighted as a motion to second that.
Okay. Any discussion, further discussion? Let's bring it to a vote.
Oh, well, could I just say,
Yeah, go please.
I will vote to support, but I want to note that I expect to see some criteria, as Jeff
Or
has indicated.
evaluation.
Evaluation and actual
Okay.
criteria on that particular subject, okay?
I'll
And-
put it in the minutes.
And Michael, you don't have
Thanks.
to feel that you're on an island. We can work together.
Okay, all in favor
Aye.
for the budget? Aye, so passed. Okay,
And we do the tax rate resolution.
and then we need a tax rate resolution. Resolution number 2024-2. A resolution to approve levying a tax on certain real and personal property under provision section 6203 of the tax property article of the annotated code of Maryland. And we have gone over the decimal points
Triple check.
many times. Ron even got his teenage daughters
Oh.
to review it. And they actually found errors in what we have been doing for years. We have had the wrong.
So
Numbers
Ron,
are
are your
there.
daughters operating as consultants? Sorry,
Or
consultants? to
Yeah,
the
right,
village
they
now?
get the usual, they get this usual consultant's fee on that.
Yeah, I asked my daughter what her hourly rate was.
Bad figure.
Yeah,
So the decimal point is correct. It's 0.002,
Yeah.
but that is not 2,000ths of a cent. That is 2,000ths of a dollar. So that was the language.
it
that
is the same rate as last year.
a high school algebra class should have
Right.
taught me, but I must have forgotten.
And we, same as last year, zero, we eliminated the tax of assessed value of what is called assessable personal property, which is essentially business property that people who are operating a business from home or business within the village. And an unchanged $1.45 per $100 of assessed value of utility property. Now, we have utility property. Utilities run their cables along poles owned by Pepco through the village, but they are using village right of way, so they do pay a fee for that. So I will introduce the resolution number 2024-2.
I'll second.
We need we have a second. Do we have a vote to favor it? Okay. Unchanged tax rates for the year. Committee reports. We have one committee chair.
As we transition, I just wanted to maybe, if you wanted to
Yeah, okay.
mention, because I know it's something that is worth just at least putting out there, is we have, I don't know if we still qualify, but we've had the lowest tax rates, you know, at least in the nearby municipalities.
In the
if
state,
not the-
in the
So
state now.
putting that in
That's
perspective.
0.002 brings us, I don't know if we're tied.
Last year we lowered it and we were higher and now we are the lowest as of last year.
So that is quite remarkable, and also given our reserves, it's
Well,
really.
just before Keith goes on with the Community Engagement Committee, I attend these informal discussions of mayors in this area of Montgomery County. And the past Tuesday was a representative from the Assembly who talked about the serious budget problems that the state is facing, and that the legislature had to deal with lower budgets that the governor was proposing, particularly hitting transportation and education. So the fact that Martin's Addition is in such good shape, I'd like to hear it for our residents who are in very good shape.
So
as
we don't have
compared to
room
the,
for that on a sign, though.
no, we don't have to put it.
But
No.
it would make a nice little,
I-
a
I-
little Chiron, maybe.
Go ahead, that's all, that's all. But I want to say something that I always used to say when I was treasurer. As an economist, a recession is coming. We don't know when. It's probably not this year, but all recessions always come.
He has
So
been
we
saying
have to
that
be
for
ready
at
for
least
that.
8.5 years, I can attest.
Right.
It's
I
coming.
do want to share, I mentioned that
It will be here.
there were some resident comments on the budget. I covered those, but there was, I apologize, this will be very brief. There was a resident comment on the process of how we engage our residents. And it wasn't that anyone questioned, we had that open working session, but they had shared some things like, for example, from Kensington, where they had, you know, a little bit more of a detail of in their announcement of things. And it sounded, you know, it sounded reasonable. And the only thing that I put into that is, I mean, for example, if you, and again, God bless all our residents and everyone who's here, but, you know, we had a working session. And if you look
Put it
today,
in the Martin's Addition. the full budget as we have here.
And today we have our adoption, and we see, the number of residents who are here. So I just put in perspective that we shouldn't change what we do. We have our open working session, and again, we can improve. Improve may not be the right word. We can provide more detail perhaps in our announcements and make it standalone, but just recognizing that not one size fits all. I mean, I think Kensington, first of all, I think they're at least 3 times, and they have many other issues. And, again, they don't have the same fiscal standing that we have. So putting it out there that there were some who did comment on that. So, all good.
So,
Okay, Community Engagement Committee.
And I believe you're done with me. I'll sign off.
Thank you, Ron.
I think so, unless you have any words of wisdom.
Nope.
No?
Thanks,
Okay,
Ron.
Good night.
bye. Good night.
Congratulate your daughters.
Yeah.
Thank you. Will do.
Okay, Keith.
The event we had a couple of days ago was very well represented. And we didn't do a head count, but there were at least as many folks in attendance as there was last year. However, it was brought to my attention that some of the streets were not covered with our flyers. And the buck stops here. That's my fault. And that won't happen again. I was upset about that because I did some of the streets myself, and I had thought that the other streets that were left out were uncovered, but we want to make sure everybody knows what we're doing, because what we do is a lot of fun and very enjoyable, makes everybody happy. And the next thing we'll be doing to make people happy is on June 30th, Sunday, June 30th, and Michael and I have already started to work on that to make that successful. And remember now, I promised that there would be no rain at all during those 3 hours.
Okay, no.
If Marty was here, she's not here. I don't know where Marty is. I'm getting a little worried.
She hasn't.
She has an engagement, yes.
She would, kind of give me some accolades.
So the June 30th event, describe it. What
That's
is it?
the July 4th party.
Oh,
We
July 4th.
we
Okay.
always do it the
Right.
Sunday before the
Right,
4th of
right,
July.
right.
So that'll be June 30th. And we already have the permit for the park. So
Got it. Okay. I even signed some
Just
checks.
putting,
Yeah.
so did we then, I apologize if it went in, went out, the volunteer appreciation?
that'll be in my report.
Aha.
Yep, it's
Okay.
coming.
Okay.
Okay, there was an election committee meeting. Katie, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, the entire election committee sends their regards tonight. They, not one could attend, so, but they, they wanted me to read their report on behalf of them. So this is their report. I'm just as liaison, I will read through it or at least do the highlights. So, election committee report, the VMA election process is running like clockwork. The committee will provide a full summary report in June. This is their brief progress report as of tonight. And what's included is April 25th election forum was marked successful. The residents submitted a wide range of questions to ask the candidates. The moderators did an outstanding job. That was residents Jen Bergeron and Naomi Nairman. Nairman's right. And the forum was fair and impartial. The recording has been posted on the village website. You all would know, you all participated, so good job. Ballots, marked successful. The Electech mailed the ballot packets to the village on schedule on Friday, April 26th, the day after the forum. As noted last month, the committee had reviewed and corrected the draft ballot packet. Per the committee's instructions, Electech rotated the candidates' names on the ballots, provided the postage paid return envelopes, put the postal tracking on the ballot return envelopes, sent the test mailing to the committee members, mailed early ballots to the voters who had requested them, and now sent the final ballots to the new voters the committee confirmed on election day. So that has gone smoothly. I saw Electech drive off myself the
Did
other
you?
night.
Oh, did you
Yes,
see
I
it?
saw it
With
right
the-
out here.
With the
It's on
with the box.
with the
Good.
box, with the blue box. May 7th, election day, marked successful. The election committee and the community engagement committee, Keith, worked together on the election day celebration on the sidewalk. Thank you very much to your committee and to your liaison. The village manager did, I'm just reading, this is what she said, the committee said. The village manager did an excellent job on the logistics and the event was well attended. I thought so too. Electech provided the official drop box on time. The election committee supervised the drop box and securely delivered the sealed ballot envelopes to Electech the same evening. Per election regulations, the committee also added new voters up until 8 p.m. on May 7th, and then certified the final 2024 voter roll. There are 638 voters on the final list for this year. The voter roll contractor, Julian Lamphere, did I say his name correctly? Will provide his final SOP report shortly. And then last item, vote counting. The committee has scheduled the vote counting session with Electech to be held via Zoom beginning 7:30 p.m. on May 21st. 7:30, yeah.
And I will remind everybody, you can zoom into that.
Yes, everyone.
Anybody can watch the vote counting.
That's right. It's very exciting. And the committee will post the notices. Lastly, the committee appreciates the council's support for this year's election process and the efficient VMA staff assistance. And they will gladly answer any questions you may have if you all have any. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Any
Thank you.
comments?
I had just a quick one. Michael, and this is not to test your memory, because believe me, mine is definitely not at your level anymore, it says that there are 630 voters on the final list. I was curious, I know there was a little kerfluffle about the idea of what the number of qualified voters were between the 2 years before and last year, and they had gone up. If my memory serves me correct, this 638 reconciles fairly closely to the number, I believe, that you had.
A little lower.
It's lower than last year's
A little lower or a lot?
committee certified. I think it was like 740. So
Okay,
it's about
so-
100 people less this year.
Okay, so the audit did prove
Yeah,
to
right,
be
yeah.
something that whatever the reconciliation was. it
Yeah.
did.
And on top of that, we'll have that list of people that were removed and certified by this year's committee to be removed
Mhm.
because they passed away or because they
Right.
moved away or whatever those reason is.
Yeah.
So when we get the list from the county next year, I can just remove those 100 names right off the bat. We already know they left. So that will be good for years ahead. So now all we have to do is keep track of who moves in and out of the village, which I'm trying to do, but it is hard.
I just wanted to get that. And
Yeah.
21st is Rosie's birthday, so we may, if we do chime in, we can have the
Okay.
little, thing in the background. But I also want to say how I believe in elections where we have candidates and, perhaps some competition, but I say there is something that is quite delightful about the idea of an uncontested election, of being able to show up with incumbents and kind of walk the side event. And there's something about that is very special, and we know it doesn't happen all the time. So good luck to
Okay,
everyone.
thank you.
Thank
Election.
you.
Is there anyone from any other committee?
There is not.
No. Okay, I just want to quickly mention the water committee, water task force, I guess, is going to have an open meeting at the end of the month, and in the process are preparing a questionnaire, a survey that will be going out to all residents, and they really need everyone's filling in and completing that survey. It will tell them and our engineer contractors what's happening in the water in the community. And the anti-Semitism meeting committee met last night and are wrapping up the year's activities and are considering what, if anything, they might suggest for next year. So that's all the committees.
And Arthur,
Yeah.
quick question, refresh our memory. I can't remember it with the water committee, but certainly in the anti-Semitism, I think they had an initial mandate for a year.
Here, right.
And was the water committee the same? We'll have to look.
I think it was, but I can't remember. I think that's a standard up to the
That's
end of the
correct.
fiscal year.
And so just that as a reminder, so the SOP, I guess, would be the committee itself would then produce some, I don't know if it needs to be a formal report or some note that would say, this is what we accomplished, and then if they felt they themselves, there's a justification for
Yeah.
continuance, they themselves would put that in And then it would be up to the council to decide whether or not.
Yeah, or we could take the initiative and say, you're right in the middle.
The
continue.
council next year will reappoint everybody,
Right.
regardless of whether they're staying on or want to stay on. The
We
council
we will ask for new
call for
a new
volunteers
call for volunteers.
That understood.
and which committees you all want to create or continue will
Right.
be.
And for those committees, those two task forces,
Mhm.
actually, they were initiated in, I think we voted in August
This year.
of 23.
Right.
And I'm not sure when they started. So they will just run for part of the term,
Mm.
assuming that they're not extended or
They- Their terms end June
The
30th.
end. Yeah,
That's
the
true,
end.
they do, but I mean, but then we'll have to do another, like
Right.
just a 4-month appointment or whatever it ends up being
If they-
until that
if-
time,
Yeah,
yeah.
whatever their timeframe is next year, you could plan for the entire year next year.
Yeah.
Well, we could,
Yeah.
but that would require extending.
I did have a question on that. This was
Yeah.
my first time during my term in office that I had to participate in the new task force being established. So that was my question about how do we extend that? What's the process? for that?
I
'Cause this
think,
came
well,
up
there's
last
not a
night at
formal
the-
process, but
Right.
the committees that, the temporary ones come to an end at the end of the fiscal year.
Yes, the
So
big
we
three.
would have to renew them
Right, right,
if we wanted to continue them, or
Yeah.
just let it die.
You know,
right.
I don't know if any have been extended, actually, have
Yeah.
they, in the
'Cause I
time
was
that
looking
I've
at, like,
been
the
on that?
walkability and that
Walkability
looks-
wasn't,
yeah.
it was a
Public
1 year.
safety was.
The public
Public
safety. one.
safety was
Yeah.
extended just long enough to finish the report because
report.
they couldn't get it
Okay.
done in time.
Yeah, because I was going
But-
back and I was like,
yeah.
I wasn't sure, the process for that, but the issue came up last night. I dialed in for a bit to the anti-Semitism
Yeah.
task force and, I know the members extended, they relayed that most of them would like to return and that this is needed now more than ever and their work has just started. That's, so I think are pushing to be extended, so
They're debating.
Well,
debating, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure it's
I
a
would-
subject rife for debate.
Yeah.
I would just offer that, and someone who's a liaison, but just taking that outside of this is that for both our temporary task force, we
Mhm.
just have a standard process of, it sounds like they'll provide some end of year recap. And then as a council, we can take each one. And if they themselves within that
Yeah.
note say that they request to extend it for the following reasons, we can take that up as a council.
Yes,
That's how it goes.
Okay.
okay, treasurer's report, anything more to add for tonight?
Just briefly, so this is going to be a verbal one. We need just a little extended time to prepare for this month. Some of the initial reports had rolled in this morning. So with that said, and we'll decide whether or not we'll just put that into, how we might share that. But we're thinking that we'll just consolidate it and have a report for next month's
Well,
meeting.
next month, June, will be our last of the fiscal year. And at that time, we will have to have a budget resolutions on any areas where we're overspending.
Yeah, and
So-
I know we're working.
I'm ready
on
for that, yeah.
Right, so that will happen next month. The village is not allowed to spend money that has not been appropriated. And so if we are going over, we have to make a resolution to approve increasing those areas.
And I should just mention
Yeah.
very, very quickly. So I did see the reports, there were no irregularities. So I'm just putting out in
Okay.
terms of whether it was, income decrease, increase, or expenses. So just looking at it, we're in good shape, but also just recognizing that the monthly treasury report is not a legal requirement. I'm not saying we're going to stop doing
Yeah.
it, but it was not something that we had missed a deadline and that, the world will stop turning, but we just had these come in today, so we will catch up and produce it for
This
next month.
meeting was moved up
It was
by
moved
2
up,
weeks.
right.
so
Yeah.
That's,
That's-
the accountant has to turn it around.
Where it comes in the accounting cycle.
Yeah.
Michael, management report.
Yes, thank you. It's exactly 8:30. Okay, I think everything's going really well. which I wouldn't have said last week. So it's a good week.
The paving is going on outside.
The paving's coming after a year of asking for it. They decided to do it on the day that we have the celebration on the sidewalk, but that's okay. The shred event was very well attended. We had 120 people come and shred. Some people with multiple boxes of stuff to shred. And we don't ask what they're shredding, we just shred. So that was really good. And as we've talked about tonight, the celebration on the sidewalk was well attended and there was lots of ice cream cones given out. Thank you, Keith, for keeping the rain held off for us. A couple things real quick. The ARPA report was finalized. I know I told the council, but I want to make sure everyone knows we have a reporting deadline of April of every year to say how much we've spent so far on what programs and stuff. We've spent over $300,000 of money from the American Rescue Plan Act, and we're still spending as time goes on here. So that report was completed without any issues. So all good there. We will, as Arthur just reminded us, we will have to do a current fiscal year budget adjustment at the June 20th council meeting. So I'll be prepared with that, saying where it's coming from and where it's going. It'll be really easy because we over budgeted by a lot for salaries last year, thinking that we might hire somebody that we didn't. So we can just take it from there and send it to a couple different categories where we went a little bit.
I want to mention that Jeff already mentioned that we did hire for the election committee, a person, a research assistant, sorry, to go through the budget, the election rolls. So we are hiring people, but they're not in that budget category.
Right.
So that, I think that's one of the points that came up.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly right. Third point here, we're ready to schedule a CPR training class. Again, that'll be a limited number of seats that'll open up. It'll be a first come, first serve, register here kind of a link. We just need to figure out when we want to do that. Probably we're running into kind of the summer holidays and stuff. So maybe we might want to wait until the afterwards, but that's ready to go. And Red Cross is even willing to give me a discount now. So saving money there. We are going to do a volunteer appreciation event. Street captains will be invited this year.
Tell everybody to get ready to party.
Volunteer
If
appreciation
you
event.
volunteered.
And
Volunteers.
we'll be a little more formal this year too, and maybe make some speeches and have a microphone to hand out to all the council members, because I know you all want to really.
Ooh, are you
Might
sure
be
you want to
dangerous,
do
right?
that?
I do think it's important to thank our volunteers. We've had more volunteers this year than maybe ever, because a lot of the committees have 5 people. I think one of the committees even has 6 people on it. And we'll have all the street
And
captains
we
there.
have 5 committees. Now, some overlap, but there's 5
Some of it
committees.
is true.
And are you doing like an RSVP just to get a sense of how many folks may come? Or I only put that out there because I know there's a lot, but you know, like a council meeting, are we going to end up with just a couple?
We might just end up with a couple, yep. And that's definitely what happened last year. I do think it is important to have it in this current fiscal year, because last year it ended up being like 2 months later.
Yeah, but let's get several invitations out.
Yeah, we will.
Repeated.
So that's
Make
June
sure people know
22nd,
about
and
it.
it's an evening meeting. Put
Tell all your people.
it on your calendars.
Oh, June 22nd.
Is that Andrew joining the meeting? So June 22nd, that'll be an evening reception with wine and those types of things.
I want to schedule a meeting with our group soon for engagement.
Okay.
You'll help me.
Yeah. Actually, you already have one on the calendar, so
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
we'll talk about that. Under maintenance, Rolling Acres did a spring street cleaning. I don't know if anyone noticed, because
Yeah, they did.
I didn't hear
I
a
saw them.
single complaint. So that's
No, they were
I guess.
walking down the sidewalks and into the street. It was pretty thorough.
They were
Good.
fast.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, it's not
And
nearly
just-
as difficult or as expensive as the fall
Mhm.
street cleanings when there's 6 inches of leaves.
Right.
So yeah, that was really good. Under project updates, I have Jeff, I have asked Joe Kutro to come up with some recommendations on how to improve the entrance and exit to the Brookville parking lot.
Magnificent.
We will see what he comes back with. He's looking at some different options, whether signage or whatnot. But so we'll see what that is. I'll follow up with him. And then lastly, I want to give a huge thanks to Arthur and to Doug Lohmeyer, who's not here tonight, for helping me with the Brookville sidewalk. We have had one-on-one on-site conversations with the 6 properties that we believe there's a conflict with, scheduling all of those and going there and meeting people. And at one point I was taking a picture of someone in their apron to send to their daughter. So it was a real
That wasn't
community,
part of the process.
true
right?
community engagement effort right there, knocking on doors and we think we don't see anything that's insurmountable as far as difficulty to overcome.
Most people said, it's about time, let's get on with it.
That's great.
So we'll be preparing, I'll have to hire another surveyor to come out and to make sure we're not violating their property lines and we're all good for those 6 properties specifically. And we're also going to reach out to the other 10 property owners that we don't think there's any issues with, but we want to make sure and give an opportunity to meet with them. So we're doing this really old school politician way, shaking hands and knocking on doors.
You know, I just want to comment in terms of just the idea of appreciating we live here in DMA versus elsewhere, recognizing and understanding some of the true, you know, really, really unsettling stories of what was going on with the Purple Line and how that was handled with res. I know I wouldn't compare apples to oranges, but I'm just saying the difference in terms of the way you're handling it is quite extraordinary. So,
That's the benefit of local government. You can be really hands-on sometimes. So I'm really hoping that we'll get over this phase and be ready to go to permitting shortly. And that's all for my report, unless there are questions or.
I just wanted to pose one quick thing, and then this could be a follow-up. I'm so grateful about the, you know, commercial exit. I have a picture of it, and this is, I don't want to implicate federal violations, but literally a US postal truck took a left and went down the wrong way. And those trucks are fairly big. So I just want to say that anything, we'll once you come up with your report, but it's just, I think, normative that people just go down that the wrong way. And we have to address it, because I'm telling you, it's just a nightmare waiting to happen. And then the other thing I just want to mention, which we could follow up, which maybe I don't know if it's Joe or someone else. It's been pointed out a couple of times, and I know it's happened to me, but I'm not just the bearer of lightning or bad luck. I know it's happened to other folks. Is with our crosswalks, if you know, there's the kind of that ubiquitous kind of person in that yellow sign. They're kind of walking. I don't, you know, if you look at that's kind of it's like a yield, you know, there's like a person who's in this yellow sign, which I guess indicates crosswalk. But I want to share, you know, even if you just go a few streets down, or in other parts, you could go to Rockville, there's literally like signs that say, now again, I know it's a state road, but maybe it wouldn't be appropriate there, is it literally will say state law, stop for those. And I just want to put it out that, you know, it might be worth just considering, because I think there is confusion about whether or not a car is really supposed to stop if there is someone who's about to walk, versus the idea that it's really the car, if they've stopped at the sign, that they can go. And I've seen some confusion. I haven't seen anyone hit, but I definitely see like some close calls. So anyway, we'll put that out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're at that stage for any resident comments, discussions, advice.
There are no residents.
There are no
So I'm
residents.
gonna fill that gap by mentioning Andrew, my Andrew.
Well,
Yeah.
Steve is here. Steve's a resident.
Oh,
I just want to make sure that we're.
I get an earful at home from him.
Yeah,
He's fine. He yields his time.
Okay,
I wanted to thank Andrew. He's my godson. He's permanently living with me. He's a teenager, and he helped us at the firm.
he was very
The
enthusiastic.
door to meet and greet people, and he's been very helpful to people in the neighborhood here, especially older folks, with their work around the house. and
Good,
outside.
good.
So we've got Andrew to help us out, and I just wanted to.
Good, thank him. He was helpful during the celebration.
I've lost my two main men, which Michael never met, Riley and
Yeah.
and David. Were here with me for years, but Andrew's making up for that.
Good,
all
thank you.
for the good meeting tonight.
Okay, without any further ado, any other questions, answers, advice, comments? We
I
will
move to
adjourn.
I move
Oh, you
to
need a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn. You, do we? you
I
move
move to adjourn.
I move to adjourn. Second,
I'll second.
aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Andrew.